Gold winner at the Presidential Environment Awards.
Up next, ladies and gentlemen, in the category of Exploratory Environmental Reporting Print Media, English category.
Environmental Production, Television Media. The award
Textile Processing Industries category. The Presidential Environmental Awards.
coming up next.
With the Uda Ludeniya Mahavidyalaya Velikala being awarded. Up next,
Best There you have it. Thank you, sir, for joining us here.
I must commend all those who are amongst the award winners for the contribution you had made to improve the environment of this country. To them I say thank you. The previous speakers before me have outlined to you what Sri Lanka is doing in respect of its environment. So I do not wish to deal with those issues. I would like to mention to you, during the debate on the IMF and earlier, I mentioned the need for a new economy, a highly competitive economy, which is also a digital economy and a green economy. So as these economic reforms and the restructuring begin, the restructuring will also involve Sri Lanka becoming a green economy. So that's the start, and there's a lot more work that has to be done. As we become a green economy, we also need the legislation, and there will be a lot of new legislation in the coming year, a new Environmental Act, because our Environment Act was passed in the 80s. There has been far more advances thereafter, a Climate Change Act, Living Entities Act, like to have Singharaja, Horton Plains, Peak Wilderness, Knuckles and Mahavalley as living entities. We'll have to look at the Forest Act and bring a new one, which will also cater for reforestation, a law to protect Muthurajavela swamp, and one on protect scenic beauties. So that's a large number of laws that have to be drafted and presented in the coming year. In addition to it, Sri Lanka intends to play a role in the global campaign for climate change mitigation, and that is going to be the International Climate Change University, which we propose here, which can be used by officials and NGOs and others for training in climate change and also for postgraduate awards. So this is our scheme of going ahead and giving priority to climate change mitigation, environment and a green economy. What we are faced with, and a lot of the developing countries are faced with, is a question of resources. How do we access them? Debt for nature swaps, are we getting the carbon credits? There are many financial schemes and instruments available. How can we in all the countries attempt to get the benefit of these schemes? Sri Lanka certainly will, as a country, we are examining how we can benefit and how we can apply for the schemes. But the question is, Sri Lanka alone cannot change the climate change in the world. We alone, ourselves alone can't do it. The whole world has to do it. And there the question comes up, is there enough funding for all this? How do you find the money, the financial resources for these, especially for climate change mitigation and protecting the environment? Now this is a question we have to ask, because the actual damage was not done by us. The damage was done by the West and the other countries that decided to develop. So the developed countries, through the process of industrialization, a number of wars, especially the 2 world wars and even the Vietnam War, all have contributed to bringing around the climate change. Now we have to suffer the consequences. So what we say is that funding has to come. In addition to what we have or what we can raise, there has to be a funding available from those who are responsible for it. Because as far as we are concerned, we can't put all our money into climate change. We have to look at education, we have to look at health, we have to look at infrastructure. All those has to be met with. Then where does the money come from? Where some in the developed world says, no, there is not enough money. To me, that is not an answer at all. Last conference of parties also adopted the loss and damage principle. But again it means, okay, for the loss and damage there must be money. If the financial resources can't come, well, it's like a judgment that can't be executed because one party hasn't got the money. So that's the loss and damage. So we have to ask, it's not that the world hasn't got money. If you look at the money that is being spent on the Ukraine war, on one side Russia is spending a large amount of money. On the other side the West. USA alone has given $100 billion to Ukraine. Then you have the Indo-Pacific, the rising tensions, how all sides are building more aircraft carriers, they are building more planes, they are strengthening their defenses. It's more than 100 billion there over the next few years. So where? That's America on one side, USA, China on the other side, India on one side, there's Japan, there's Australia, others who are spending money. So look at the amount that goes on armament and for various other purposes. So there is money and that money has to be made available. The other problem that we have in the developing world is most of the countries are reeling under debt. Sri Lanka is one of the first countries and have taken steps for us to get out, but that alone is not enough. There are large number of countries that are reeling under debt. So they will have no resources for climate change mitigation. So these are two sides of the coin. Funding for climate change mitigation projects and the access to that funding, and secondly, the debt issues of the developing economies. These are two issues. They are actually joined, and this is what we have to raise and we have to discuss. Sri Lanka certainly will take this position as we go in for the next round of conferences regarding the environment and the climate. So I thought I'll outline to you what we are planning to do, both nationally and internationally. The Honorable Minister has been leading that internationally, supported by the Foreign Affairs Ministry, but this will be one of the key planks of our foreign policy. And we have no doubt that Sri Lanka will take the lead in ensuring that the developing economies have the resources, certainly, to mitigate climate change in their areas. And I would therefore thank you